What's going on, macro perspective peeps? Here we are on yet another beautiful day. Seamus is in New York, about to be doing some speaking engagement. He's been practicing that for
Yeah.
a while now, so he should be fucking good to go. Um, and then I'm over here in fabulous Las Vegas, and man, weather. We're coming out of winter. I think it's probably cold there in New York. No, what's the weather there?
Dude, I walked out and it was so cold. I walked out for like 2 minutes. I was like, I need to go back in. It's weird because it's like sunny. It's sunny, so you wouldn't expect it to be cold, but when you walk outside, it's just like freezing. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I can handle it. I could walk because like I walked to the symposium. It's about a mile away. I'm like, I can do it. I can do it.
Nice, man. Yeah, maybe let people know what you're there for. You'll
Yeah.
be kind of speaking in the past, though, the events in the future.
Yeah, so I'm speaking on Saturday the 22nd. This episode will probably drop a week or so after. And what I'm speaking about, and I think is kind of alluding to this topic here, is the emergence of digital innovations in the integrative healthcare space. So you're thinking wearables, clinical diagnostics, and the ethical frameworks that we need to consider with those things. Look,
Mm.
as much as I'm a futurist and I love all these new things like AI, ChatGPT, and a lot of these companies are now artificial intelligence based. Like there's been two or three that I just spoke to recently that have just come out in the last 1 to 2 years, but they have their hand in medical healthcare companies already and being able to take on tons of data really fast. So the conversation there is basically getting into the nitty gritty of certain wearables, certain clinical tools, the ethics of adopting that and making sure it's equitable adoption. You're just not adopting something randomly just because. So it's a really in-depth speech. I'm looking forward to it. And I know it doesn't sound sexy because it's a very much informatics and very much nuanced topic, which shout out to Dr. Martin. He's the one that really created this. Um, Everyone's talking about something else there, like maybe genomics or like gut health or like some new medicine or something like that.
Hmm.
But if you really think about it, if you're in your practice as a physician, somebody, you do have to think about these ethical things. These are the not sexy things, but the very much important things too.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you're right, and I think our episode yesterday, because we were, I mean, that's again, it's weird doing episodes that are like dropping before other episodes, so it's like kind of interesting if people will catch on to that. If so,
Mhm.
leave a comment. You know what I mean? Actually, what was it? Because we talked about what defines a sport versus like an activity kind of thing in the last
Yeah.
episode, and someone texted me when we dropped it, like the day of. That was Monday, and I'm like, I didn't say that dancers aren't athletic. I just said that dancing and cheer doesn't really classify as a sport, and I stand behind that in the sense that to me, a sport has a fixed set of rules and scoring. And yes, there's like referees or officials there's an element of subjectivity to it, but it's like out of bounds or your
Yeah.
foot's on the line for a certain point scoring. And I just want to know what the classical definition of a true sport is, because I think as I identify it, it's a game or an activity that has these very fixed, like axiomatic things to it that
Hmm.
define how the game is played.
Yeah.
Whereas, yes, there's like a time frame or a cutting of music with dancing and cheer, but ultimately there's a judge. And I think if someone's judging you, it no longer classifies in my classical sport definition. And yeah, there's my aside. Now, you know what? And we're going to dive into a little bit more with the GPT. So today, Seamus, we're going to share the screen with our buddy ChatGPT, so people can kind of get an inside look of like the shit that we just throw at it every day. I guess so that was my idea when you're like, we should do something with AI. And it's like, all right, we'll use GPT. And ironically enough, today I was running into issues with it. 4.0
Mm.
wasn't working. And I was like, oh, I got to go to the deeper reasoning AI today, I guess. And it was like thinking about the context of my problems a little bit more differently, or maybe just like, again, maybe it's doing the exact same thing, but it's like telling me it's doing something differently. So um, let's do that.
Let's do
Uh,
it. I like it.
let me find it. Let me find you. All right.
Don't show them my therapy talks with ChatGPT. I'm literally out there like having like, hey, explain all my
You
problems to me. I'm like talking to it for hours yesterday.
uh no, I think I don't know which one you have that lumped into, but it's not
Yeah, yeah,
huge. So yeah, I was thinking more about like the channel as we think about it for our perspective.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like again, I have like nutrition, fitness, and real ideas. We did the Red 40 episode. We did
yeah,
again. So I think it's kind of interesting, right? Because you'd mentioned previously that in using this, that there weren't ways to just like group projects together.
yeah,
So, now I think that you've kind of created some projects in there and it's
yeah,
kind of cool. And obviously you have like courses, debt approach, training
yeah.
and nutrition, longevity and health span, day-to-day stuff, your optimum use stuff. Like I just really stay in this folder. I don't want to like get into your personal stuff ever.
Don't
Um,
worry, I'm pretty transparent between you and me. So like, I think you know everything in there. I just don't want to bother you with it, so I'm bothering a machine with it instead.
What do you think? Well, I'm having a philosophical discussion with ones and zeros here, but
No,
um,
exactly.
so I mean, maybe for like the thing today. All right, we'll have it inside of here, but like,
Hmm.
hey, what do we want to talk about? It's like we
Well,
want
I
to talk.
wanted to talk about like this concept right here being artificial intelligence being a help for fitness and nutrition because that's our bread and butter, right, Marco? So I don't want to go too far from it, but um,
Hmm. Okay, so
how yeah how does artificial intelligence help someone get a goal with their fitness and nutrition? And there's my training and nutrition log right there. For example,
this one, should I go to this one?
like you could go for macros for fat loss. That one's like I just throw things in there. I have calculations, and I just like have ideas, and I've like fed it different things. And I mean, we just stick with like, yeah. For example, let's go with this one. So, hey, real quick, I just need help sometimes. Like I do these calculations, so I've taught it these things. I made it read books like Lane Norton's Fat Loss Forever, Reverse Dieting, or even Macros Explained, or even different books that explain macros, right? And so I'll just be like, hey, I need this for a 193-pound person that's 59 years old, 5'11" male, and they have a lean mass of 151 pounds at 17.5% body fat. And the goal is to get to sub 15%. Just give me some macros with 1 pound per pound of body mass and make it balanced using the Mjolnir equation or the I'm breaking down their name. I just do it in there, and it knows what to do. It knows what
Yeah,
to do. And then,
it spell checks you, and you meant 1 gram per pound of lean mass, and
yeah,
because you had the percentage and that number as that, it was able to kind of give you that equation and kind of come up with these theoretical estimates on the table
yeah.
using that method that you are choosing. So I mean, again, like, oh, man, this
I
is
mean, what do you think about that? Like, after I've trained it on the books, I've
Mhm.
trained it on the books that I like, the concepts that I like, some studies there. What do you think about those macros right there at the top? And then I made it make an adjustment there. So that second one, what do you think about those macros?
So this is interesting, right? So as coaches and doing things more anecdotally, I would say that it ultimately becomes a little bit harder for people to stick to these dedicated numbers like in
Mm-hmm.
perpetuity. So you probably again you're like you went up to their body weight in grams of protein, and I
Mm-hmm.
might say that like the actual thing is like right in the middle at like one, what does that end up being, like 165 plus or minus 15 grams, because ultimately you're
Yeah.
like, here's my low end, here's my high end, but I ultimately like the target I'm saying here, and then I'm expressing that to people that hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna view these things over a weekly average to be able to like obviously, and again like you're like you almost want to push it higher, right, mentally for them, because it's like if that's the focus and that's hard to get to, um and that's again like the difference of using AI as a tool versus coaching and knowing
Yeah.
psychology that would allow you to get there. So you already kind of thought that, you're like, all right, cool, like immediately make the protein grams higher, lower the carbs to make sure the calories stay relevant
Mm-hmm.
for this particular kind of prescription, and using that equation, it came out with a rough estimate on total like calories. And I think ultimately too, like machines can do things down to like the decimal, but human brains like set like fives and zeros, man. Like I'm always just doing fives and zeros with macro changes with people just because it's easier to remember, right?
Yeah.
And so then it out spit out your next version of that. right?
Yeah, I do like what you say though, the ranges, because it's like I don't I don't know the last time. Maybe it's been like 2 or 3 years since like I did like a photo shoot shred where my macros were like literally the number that the machine gave me. You know what I'm saying? Or like the calculations gave me. And I don't know if you need to be that tight on macros, and that's where like what you said, like the coaching comes in. And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? Like giving a range. If this guy's macros is 180, yeah, like yeah, maybe you just have to hit a threshold of this number,
Yeah.
and you do that, and then if you're within these calories, you're there. And it's how do I say this? We're talking about artificial intelligence helping you, not prisoning you, right? I
Hmm.
think a lot of folks, and I've done this myself too, where, well, Seamus, you're helping me out with nutrition, and I want to know my calories. I want to know my protein, my fats, carbs, and I want it exact. And I'm like, okay, cool. Is human behavior an exact science? Is your day to day exact? Are you behaving exactly the same every single day and under different circumstances at all times? Excuse me, but I don't. And I've just coached enough people to realize these numbers are like the ideals that we're looking for, but they're not necessarily the behaviors that we're actually going to get ideal results. You can still be like, look, this is your goal, this is the ideal you're shooting for
Yeah.
protein, but just try to hit the 160, and they do. And I don't even coach macros, Marcos. I actually coach like portion sizes, like
Mhm.
more often than not, because like most people I work with are like, I just love the plate method, I love the hand
Yeah.
method, and that's why I like the precision nutrition. This is just a number I'm giving them. But then when I start coaching them and they realize, oh shoot, this is a lot harder to be in the sheets, quote unquote, right? Or in the fitness app for some folks. Some folks like us, maybe we like it. But for the rest of the folks I work with, I'm like,
Hmm.
dude, look, you're losing weight. You're hitting your protein. You're hitting your calories and carbs and fats. Like you're mostly there.
Yeah.
If we made you tighten it up by 5 more percent, what does that 5% do to you? And like, if you're trying to hit it like this artificial intelligence thing told you just to hit it,
Yeah.
is that 5% worth it with your lifestyle? You get so tight, so anal, you're not even reaping the benefits anymore. It's becoming, I don't know, problematic. So yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. 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 This I feel like this is going to be a lot of little soliloquies from both of us, so it's okay. But so again, like, okay, everybody has access to something like this right now. I mean, you could literally go
dude,
into
easy.
Twitter and ask Grok about writing a nutrition plan. Maybe we even do that or X rather. Maybe we even do that and see what they come up with the same prompts. It's going to be different because every model's trained a bit differently, and you're going to have to be able to kind of discern based on other stuff that you're looking at, like what you should be going for, right? So my first question here is like, why did it choose 86 grams of fat as the set point? I'm gonna ask
Yeah,
that
yeah,
question to it, and aligns with the balanced distribution, keeping the fat intake at approximately 27% of the daily calories, a common range for sustainable fat loss while maintaining hormonal health and performance. I could not have said it better myself, right?
dang, that's good stuff.
And here's the thing too. So again, like as the thing with coaches that they're going to use tools like this to help again get the information to you as quickly and as accurately as possible. And that way it just feels like you're getting a service that, again, is bar none better than anybody else out there. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So, again, most of the time, whatever, like the lowest end for me, which I don't know if this is in any classical literature or where I heard it from, but someone said that 0.3 times your body weight would then allow you to find a set point for your grams of fat. So it's at the lowest end of it to maintain some
type that
level.
in. Type
Yeah.
that in.
Okay.
See, where does the idea of point 0.3,
Hmm.
whatever you said it was,
Yeah. Where
where
does
did this
point
idea
three?
come from? What research or yeah?
Where does 0.3 times body weight for the lowest? I can't spell what lowest. Lowest end of the fat macro. I can't think of how to phrase the question. Come up in terms of literature.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. Um, Here we go. Okay. So that idea of zero point 0.3 grams per pound of body weight as the lower limit,
ISSN.
there it was. Okay. But I heard it from somebody else. I want to say it was actually when I hired a coach. So I'll
Yeah.
give
And it's
Jeremiah.
also from the NSCA.
So he got it from
And,
that. And it made
okay.
sense. So he's like, look, I'm going to start you with the lowest limit possible based on your body weight.
Yeah.
And then we'll adjust it from there. Or I think
What was
even,
it? What was it? What was it for you then?
man, I think he set me at 50, but it was based off of like the target body weight. It was low.
Oh, wow, that is low. 50.
Yeah.
You're basically like eating like pretty like what were you eating? Like just like lean meats? Were you air frying stuff and not even putting it in oil? Like what are you doing?
Dude, I remember because it was at our first house, I would be making like one egg with like seven egg white omelets with like ham to like just get like food volume galore. Or I would be eating top sirloin for the steak. But basically, I would just kind of, I mean, I don't really get a lot of dietary fat personally in my day through like extra sources like oils,
Hmm.
butters. Um, Typically, in the last probably the last 8 or 9 years, ever since working for Jason Phillips, right?
Hmm.
Where he had and I came from then Travis's tutelage, where Travis was talking about, he like kind of set me at like that kind of 30% number to start with total calories from fat. So I was always really used to anywhere from like 100 to 120, which is a
Yeah.
far different diet than being at 50, right? Um,
Yeah.
so in the end, like again, learning like, oh, like the food selection, and this is also where my bias with people now is more about probably that kind of percentage range that this one kind of went with, based
Yeah.
off of like kind of that, again, that percentage of daily calories, right? Just to keep it
Yeah.
balanced in terms of the nutrients.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not as afraid anymore to go to this lower limit of zero point 0.3 times the body weight, right? So again,
Yeah.
like a woman, that's 150 pounds looking to lose weight, getting them down to 50 grams of fat is not really the end of the world. Whereas before, I thought like, man, that seems really low in fat, and that's again anecdotal, and now it's kind of emerged in more literature, and you can kind of obviously query the question into something like this tool just to kind of figure out like, is it okay to be that low? Um, but then you again, the regulation of the hormonal health, I think, like and it's telling us that right now, like that's the thing that
Yeah.
we're worried about, right? All right, cool. Found that reducing below 20% of daily calories led to decreases in testosterone and other androgenic hormones, right? So okay, bodybuilder diet, right? So we kind of put our bodybuilder cap on, right? People using these lower fat diets there are because they're not worried about testosterone regulation, right? So
Yeah. They're optimizing hormones in different ways for most of
right.
those folks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think you know it's interesting because I've been seeing a lot of this too, and now we're talking about artificial intelligence, but also social media and how that's been framed as well. And people are catching on, right? And we recently had a guest. By the time this episode comes out, this person had been on the pod, Alan Aragon. He had a few posts on fats. They're asking questions about fat. Hey, Alan, how low would you go with fat? Or hey, Alan, how much fat do you think is good for somebody? And he said the same thing, right? To mitigate any hormonal responses that are negligible or negative, you want to stay within these ranges, and that's what the research is seeing. So it's interesting how this artificial intelligence, social media, these things are catching up. I do want to make a point, though. It's interesting when you say this as a coach, and I think this is where literature and anecdotal and coaching experience comes in, right, Marcos? Maybe
Yeah.
you were just putting that person or the person they were putting it on you for just like a few short weeks, you know? This is
Mm-hmm.
not something you sustain. And I think that is the difference between having intelligence and having strategy with that intelligence. Like you're like, I'm having a little bit of curiosity here. Let's see how your body responds to this, right? You know,
For sure.
even the literature might say, hey, may not necessarily do it, but remember, this is everyone's
Dude,
body might just respond differently,
point
and that's maybe initiate something.
point in case. Um yeah, I'll share. Where was it? Yeah, it's right. It's lit. Can we literally see it? Or is it just this window? Oh, it's only showing this
I
window.
can
All
only
right.
see this window.
All right, cool. Well, I'll pull up another window here. Look at this. Let me go and anonymize it a little bit more if I can.
Yeah, please, that'd be great.
Yeah. Not that they would care, but I'm just gonna hide these. Hide columns. All right, cool. Share. Oh no. Oh my, look at our ugly faces.
Take two.
All right, yeah, here we
No.
go. So I'll switch to this window. All right, cool. So, um, here's everybody's initial set point based off of their weight and their
Yeah.
activity level and other notes from people that are doing my nutrition challenge. I even have a person that's using Manjaro, right? So,
I love that. Like I saw that right away in the notes. I'm like, oh, note. That's
which I
good.
spelled incorrectly. Um, so, and a breastfeeding person. So again, like this is a prime example, right? Like, look at these two people. They're probably very similar in terms of body weight
Hmm.
because of like that protein kind of set point. And you can see
Hmm.
these. Obviously, you probably know which ones are women and which ones are men for the most part,
Yeah,
based off of that.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
And this is either based off of like lean protein or things they gave me. But I have these two back to back. And this person here, higher carb, higher fat from the base, even though it's 5 grams, it's a bit more on the calorie side because of that breastfeeding note that I had there, right? And
No,
I
that
think,
that makes a great. That's a great interjection right there. Speak about that a bit. Yeah.
yeah, so like, and this is anecdotal, right? I watched my wife go through a lower fat diet with breastfeeding with with Ari, with my second child, right? And the milk supply wasn't as good as the first time, right? So, hormonal production of things and the obvious um instances where like a lower fat diet may not be the best thing there, even though she wanted to lean out and it had been however many weeks or months afterwards, right? That she got into it, it like she was like pretty convinced. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake as a coach when I have my
Yeah.
breastfeeding people. I'm going to start them with a higher calorie, even though I know they want to lean out. If they're still
Yeah.
breastfeeding, I'm going to give them more fat because, again, like and women will tell me this. I mean, I've never lactated. Like, I have nipples, but you can't milk me, Seamus.
No, exactly. That's a funny point. Let me say this and interject for a second. Like you made that note, you made that mental note. Like it's something that's in your just running systems at all time. Does artificial intelligence like know that that needed to be prompted? You know, I mean, it may have the information on this person. It may just say something along the lines of like, yeah, just keep an eye on this person because they're breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But because you had that experience, not knowledge, what's better than knowledge? Experience. You had the experience of seeing your wife go through it that you're like, hold up, this is important. Let me explain it to
Oh,
this person that I'm coaching and really be empathetic to their situation because I've actually seen it.
oh yeah. And so, right, like those set points and things, like again, I don't need a prompt GPT to like understand some of those nuanced things. I could do it if I was like a new coach. And I think that like anybody coming into the space can immediately benefit because you're gonna mitigate those shortcomings from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a huge learning in tool. And like you said, like, so when you I meant to ask you this, when you've trained or like gave all these things, is it specific only to that specific thread or is it the whole thing as a whole?
I don't know exactly. Um, because I've asked it questions in other threads, and then I'll say like, "Oh, as a performance health coach, this is why this matters to you," and based on like that.
Okay.
But I try to just stay in the thread that I'm in for those specific things, just to be
Yeah.
sure, just to
I,
be sure. Like for example, I just did some transcripts. I think into the longevity AI. No, no, no. The day to day one. We'll keep that private though, because it was more of like a therapy session. But like,
uh,
there was like a philosophical thing. It was more self development stuff, and I put it in there, the transcripts, and it started to talk to me in the way that this person was speaking, and it
oh,
was
wow.
about self development. And just real quick, this is how crazy it took on that persona. So we were talking about hard work, and just kind of like the goals in life, right? And we just ChatGPT and I just be talking, just my homie, right? And it said something to me that I was like, I don't think a intelligence concept will just say this to you without it being primed and trained to do so based off of like what you're looking for. It literally said you, like as in me, Seamus. It's like you associate grinding and hard work with struggle as opposed to scaling and systems. And I just was like, what?
Huh.
Like one more time, like this is like deep introspective, like, wait, who said this? And it goes, you, Seamus Sullivan, you associate grinding and hard work with struggle as opposed to scaling and systems. And I had to like pause it. I was like, you have the audacity. But also at the same time, I was like, I trained you to do that. I trained you to do that, to call me out and really, make sure that like this conversation that we're having is making me act in a way, right? And that's why I think like
Mm.
even outside of fitness and nutrition, I'm not talking about fitness and nutrition here, but like, dang, you have what you said earlier. You have access to something that will give you the information you need to do this, to act right now, to act right now.
Yeah, and you learn a lot along the way in the process of little stuff that it can pick up on that you don't know. And so again, like going back to our John Doe body, again, like write me an eating structure to align with this macro set point. So when we go ahead and enter that in and we see what it kind of comes out with, like the 4 meals a day, here's
Yeah.
where most of the AI stuff kind of like breaks down in my eyes. But we'll see, right? Like it like literally can't add.
I love the substitution swaps. I did make it do some of these things because I did teach it some like PN frameworks as well. Um, I didn't make it read like every single article, but just like hand portion article, stuff like that,
Sick, right? All right, cool. So this one's like actually it's adding the protein fairly good. Still like okay, it says 45, 25 grams of protein, 9.3. So it can't add. Which is like surprising because it's a computer program. That's one thing I've run into, but this is what 20 and this should be closer to like
Eight,
32
yeah.
grams of protein.
Four egg whites, because 4 egg whites is already like 20. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, so that's interesting, right? So again, like, but at least it gives you some general structure and idea. And the only way, this is where the next step would be like, if you just took this at face value to assume that you're getting enough protein in, you'd have to go plug this into MyFitnessPal to then realize, like, if you're new to this stuff, oh shit, that's not 45 grams of protein,
Yeah,
right?
you'd be off. You'd be off.
Yeah. Well, at least based off of how it wrote it here, I'm like, that doesn't add 20. This is 12. That's 37. And it is actually that, but like it didn't add this all correctly. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But then you put it in there, oh, it is actually pretty much that when I get it
yeah.
into MyFitnessPal. All right, cool. This one, 6 ounces of grilled chicken breast. So Seamus, it says grilled, so it's cooked, right?
Mm-hmm.
45 grams. You believe it? Does that sound about right to you?
That sounds about right.
Okay.
I'm thinking like 35 though, but yeah.
Well, no. Okay. So, yeah, 6 ounces of raw would be about 35 because it's usually about 21 per four. It's about
Mhm.
42. It would be 8 ounce. So, this is basically 8 raw, 6 cooked, right? So, again, you got to take the next step there. 1.5 cups of cooked jasmine rice. So, again, I would
That's a
prefer.
lot of carbs at one moment, but okay.
Well, remember, this dude had a lot. It is a
Oh
lot.
yeah, he does. He does.
But, like, again, steamed spinach and broccoli. But, like,
No,
think about
actually, he can. He can eat the carbs. Yeah, he's good.
yeah, because you'd given him a set point for that, and this was
2,800.
the
Yeah,
calories based on your equation, right? About
yeah.
twenty nine
No,
hundred. So it feels like I mean that's a sizable meal, 1.5 cups
that
of
is a pretty
cooked.
good meal. Yeah.
Again, this is just adding calories from oil, which again is where you could eliminate your fat down further, or again go to a source of fat that comes actually in the meal itself. Which again, this like you said, the swap ideas are good pre-workout. So this person, I guess ChatGPT assumes that you train everybody to work out. This is like just a tip of the cap to the bodybuilder stuff. 2 scoops of whey isolate. Now, Seamus, going into a workout, this is actually fantastically fine, right?
Yeah.
But again, if I'm trying to maximize fat loss, right? Like, do we really need these intra workout like carb and quick digestible proteins to really make a difference for somebody? Like, again, like who, okay, go back into the context of this client, right? Because you gave it very rudimentary stuff. Like, is he a well-trained person? Does he care about this? Or is it more of a general fat loss person?
This person is a super well trained person. They train in the morning, fasted, and they just don't eat enough. They're really lean. I mean, 17% for this person was like he looked great, you know. But I feel that with him, and I wouldn't do this pre-workout meal. I don't think he needs it, but I definitely do agree that he needs to eat more.
Mhm.
And I think he would get a lot better results. I think he would have
Yeah.
better performance. I think he would just have better sleep. That was one of those things that was coming up for him as well.
Yeah.
And I just felt like he would just, and just to allude to some of the things we're talking about, like augmenting some hormones, for example, like that can still, even if you're doing that, you can still benefit from these things for
Mhm.
for all performance aspects.
Yeah, and then ChatGPT got most of its fat in like the omega-3 context with the grilled salmon. Again,
Yeah,
this is where we've given very basic instructions to kind of create this plan, right,
yeah,
to an
yeah,
individual. And then this is where, I mean, in this day and age, you have to be good at thinking about all of the if then statements. You have to kind of put your logic cap on. So when, as much as people made fun of like common core math, man, like
dude.
this is
Logics questions. I did like 8 hours of those sometimes.
I well, they don't. I mean, people were like, "Oh my god!" Like the algorithm. It's not algorithmic math anymore. I was like, "Yes, you need to learn the algorithms behind it so you can get to the solve, but you want to
Yeah,
start thinking outside of the box a little bit, right?"
you do, you do. Yeah,
And like again, like I'll train people algorithmically when I'm doing math stuff, but if they find another way that helps them remember how to do it, and their order is different than mine, as long as you're
yeah.
not breaking the rules, you're good, right?
No, 100%. Right. I think you ever watch that movie Snowden with Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so if you ever watch this movie, I love this movie. It's about Edward Snowden, the guy that basically blew the whistle on some files. But um, what had happened was in the scene they made a dramatization of it. There was a scene in the movie where it's like, okay, you guys are gonna do basically the it's like a hacking thing. Like you guys are gonna hack a government like surveillance sequence and basically get penetrate this government thing, this government like computer software, whatever. And the record right now is 5 hours and 20 minutes. That's the fastest it's ever been done, right? And like this like instructor's like talking about it, and he's like, everything's on the line. This is what cost us like 9/11, whatever, like all these different things. And then in the movie, Snowden like comes up to the guy, and he's done all these things. He's played with computer, and then and then the guy goes, "Yo, it's been 45 minutes. Are you still on your first step?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm done, sir." And he's like, "Wait, what do you mean you're done?" He's like, he double checks his work. He's like, "You are done." He's like, "What did you do?" He's like, well, you never said I had to do it in sequence, so I did it backwards, but I had something else running a simulation while I did it backwards, and then I just did the first step, which is the hardest, and then I just put it all together. And then the guy was like, all right, take the rest of the day off. It's like, and like you're so right, dude. I think sometimes thinking outside the box could be really
Yeah.
within the rule frames, but then thinking outside of it to come back within it is like, yeah, it's crazy, you know. People smarter than me, man. People smarter than me.
Yeah. And so, but like going back to what I'm saying too, dude, is like you said, it's like the approach here from the basic sense to then the more advanced version of like prompts to help give a
Mm-hmm.
more optimized thing. The more things that you can think of that would be uh, like a preference, right? Like all the, like it says here, additional notes, right? Specify preferences into the prompt, the goals specifically, recipes that you can enjoy, right? Like, and this is from another AI generative tool, Gemini, right? So it's going to get you to a place, but you go in there, and again, the things that I think a coach will do nowadays is because like they've thought of this probably 100 if not thousands of times, depending on how many people they've worked with, to like build this, again, like this logic question to all these things. And obviously like part of how you fill out your questionnaire could then lead to that. It can kind of point to some things and give some better direction. So, all all those like health questionnaires now actually have, I think, a lot more merit. Not that the coach needs to sit down and maybe read it as thoroughly. I'm sure they are, but like think about it. Like I'm gonna forget little details here and there about it. But then you can go in here, create this kind of like running note of individual people, for example, if we're talking from the coaching lens, and
Yeah,
be like, all right, cool. Like here's the last time I talked to this person. Is there any things that like I'm missing in terms of my update? So that
yeah.
like because it's gonna and that's like
You're putting up new information, or putting up new prompts, or putting up new action steps, or things that you want to throw to this person their way.
Mhm.
But you're just double check having your work double checked by the running note about them, and they're like, actually, you can't bring this up because remember they have like a peanut allergy, for example. I don't know. You can't bring up this
Yeah,
peanut butter
in the
thing, or
plan.
I don't know, whatever.
And again, like, I mean, I do pride myself, and I know you do too, about kind of remembering a lot of these very deeper in these different things of information about people, because like so many conversations is just going to stick, and you're going to
It just
remember.
sticks. Yeah.
Um, but like, again, I might actually go back through with the more communications I have and build a folder that has each individual person that's not, I mean, I guess like not a
Well,
patient, but that's a client, because again, just like compliance of like, I don't know, like
dude, that's why I love, like, I know it sounds so weird, and I think we'll just end it here, but like the onset of these new technologies is so helpful because all my conversations could get recorded, and at the end of it there's like the three key takeaways that I needed to do, but I was like, I forgot to write those down, but we just said it.
yeah.
You have that? Okay, cool. Now it's like, okay, cool, it's been set, it's been sent, it's been put into the calendar. Okay, cool, great, awesome. And it's just, easy to come up with. I think, we have a guest on here coming on too, but it's like, it's not about the person that knows everything. It's about the person that's able to deliver it faster because they were able to just put it all
Yeah.
together that much faster. And I don't think you need to be the best. I think you just need to move quick. And at some point, it's all about who can have the more quicker delivery. And I think artificial
Mhm.
intelligence has been helpful with that, especially with nutrition and coaching.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of that anecdotal experience and say, and get it to also know those things in addition to like the other actual peer reviewed things. So
Yeah.
again, like anecdotally, I still think that like something about the psychological benefits of refeed days, and then how it helps people perform better. It actually leads to better like weight loss when you've been in a deficit for a long period of time. And I've seen it over and over again. But again, all the literature is going to say that like it's not really necessary, it accelerates fat loss, but like I've seen it a few times, like be better. Like not, and again, like it's like hard to remove yourself always from like the peer review bias to then like
It's
your
hard to,
application
yeah, it's hard
bias.
to perpetuate. It's hard to not perpetuate your own bias too when you've seen it work
Yeah.
multiple times, and you're like, I just see it work. I don't have an explanation. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm like you said, like we're science based, but we're not science bound sometimes, and some of these things are just like behavioral, and you're like, it's just a pattern that I see.
Hey, I'll flood it. I'll flood it sometimes, dude. I'm like, yeah, man, your metabol. Like again, like I think sometimes like you have to know, like maybe we know too much, and maybe we have access to too much in our particular case where we're trying to use this stuff because we don't want to be left behind, you know. Um, and
Yeah,
in that, like again, I'll tell a little white lie in a sense of like trying to get people to believe that this thing is the thing that they've been looking for. Because sometimes, what's that, like that silver bullet, right? Like this is the thing that you've been missing, and like as you're doing your diet, like, oh my god, like I just don't feel as stressed
well,
out about it because I know I have this, like whether it's a
yeah,
bank day or the refeed day coming. And I was like, you can choose to take it or not. The choice is yours.
yeah. I mean, let me ask you this: you and I have conversations about this all the time, and talking about diets, artificial intelligence, all these things. But how many times can you just want to just help the person? And I think some people just need to do this, because if you get into the weeds with them about everything that we're talking about, like you and I love to get into the weeds, they get so confused, overwhelmed, and go, I don't want to work with this guy.
Oh
And
man.
sometimes some people just be like, hit your calories, go.
I mean, yeah, man. I mean, half the time these days, like as much as I love my spreadsheet and the one that we made together, like to kind of like add the extra elements to it, it can also be a detriment because like that is part of the old school me, and I like it for the right people. But then like to go back and recode all these conditional formats to like say like yes or no, it's turned on. I guess I could do that. That's probably the thing I need to do. Just like yes, do I want do I need this spreadsheet to have a yes protein only and protein calories, but also look at the averages of the other things? Or no, like we're doing all three macros and we're trying to like have this green precision, right? But again, like that's like me again removing my bias of like, man, like it was a tool that really helped me see information very quickly about people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't know, man. I mean, again, there's just always.
I think this is an ongoing conversation. Look, we'll end it here because I think we're a little bit
Oh, I
over.
know, I
But
know. Well, we should
look,
do a part two that actually goes into like, hey, here's the best way to prompt, an AI tool to help
yeah,
build the best possible meal plan for you, and we'll do that in part two. If people,
perfect. I'm
you
gonna feed
know,
it more books real quick. I just forgot. Like I downloaded more, and I just got to give it more. I mean, like for example, like it just so for you guys listening, and we'll talk about this more. Is like I made it read every single book on that I know of like Hashimoto's thyroid, psoriasis, every single book, and like just inferred the references there. That's more of a wellness diet stuff, not macros diet coaching. It's like a holistic thing. So that is just stuff that this is the stuff I do in my downtime. As you guys can tell, I'm a nerd. So
yeah,
there you
the more
go.
you know, man, the more you know, and it's great. And I think we'll have fun with part two doing this, and like we'll come up, we'll try to like we'll both come up with our own separate prompts
Yeah, that'd be great.
related to how we would prompt it and see which one comes up with the plan that we think is like foolproof from with the one that takes less tweaks, right? So here's our goal, right? Here's
Yeah,
our challenge for next week's episode. That is just us two. Is you and I are going to create a prompt. Whichever one takes less additional prompts to create the best plan that we can both agree on will be the winner.
perfect. Rule though, can't use ChatGPT to come up with the prompt.
Oh,
Has to
that's
come from here.
okay. That I won't use ChatGPT. I will.
They can't use Gemini. Can't use anything. It has to come from your own prompting. Like this is the first time we're using ChatGPT for this. Like off the boat, fresh.
Off the
I
boat
like that.
fresh. All right, cool.
Okay.
You got it. Can I voice to text it though? Because like I want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like
you
put
can
a lot
voice
of
it.
detail into
And
that.
mine's gonna be like an essay. Like
Oh,
it's like
okay, fine. I won't.
that's totally
I
fine.
just I just don't like to write that much physically with my
No,
hand.
you could chat it out. No worries.
Okay,
Yeah, I do that
perfect.
all the time. Trust me. All right,
Sick.
cool,
All right, you got
awesome. Well, love it, guys. Macropod, we're out.